Well, good morning, everybody. I missed you.
Good morning.
I did miss you. I want to tell you, though, I think that this year we should make it a goal every time we go or I go somewhere and I come back. You should say, how did our trip go? Not your trip, because we all went to Bolivia. Do you realize that? Let me tell you, someone here or a bunch of people here have incredible faith, because going to La Paz, Bolivia is a horrible, horrible situation for me. Regulations, and the captain can confirm this to us, but if you're in an airplane and the doors open at 10,000 feet, you have to get the masks down because you need oxygen at 10,000 feet. Now La Paz is at 14,000 feet, so you definitely need oxygen. And many times before, I've gone over there and I've missed oxygen. I can't breathe, and I've been in the hospital, and my blood vessel, my eye popped the other time I was there. And then when I started coming here, as a pastor, about 8 months ago, I've had 2 trips to Bolivia, and in both times, you guys have prayed. And I was in La Paz, Bolivia, for a conference of about 2,000 parents, and I'm giving my first conference, and I feel great. To the point, listen, to the point that I have 2 Bolivian friends that came with me from Cochabamba to La Paz. They have a headache, they're sick, and I'm giving the conference. I'm all prayed up, I'm good. And so I was able to give my conference in La Paz, 2 conferences. Actually, my whole time in Bolivia, more than 300 people made decisions for the Lord. So it's really exciting. So please, when you pray for me, you are going with me. So next time when I come back, how did our trip go? Not how did your trip go, but how did our trip go? Because you contributed to all this, and it's amazing what God is doing in Latin America. Listen, the Lord is doing amazing things around the world. He is alive and well, and we're so excited to be back because we know for sure that He's doing something here as well. I came back, and my radio show is on Wednesday, so I came back Monday. I was here for staff meeting, and my meeting's here on Tuesday, and then I drive to Miami to do my radio show that airs in Latin America. And the first call that night was, I met this guy. I know him now for 2 weeks, and he asked me to marry him. Should I marry him? I said, hold on a second, let me see. You have not met this guy before? And she says, no. You met him 2 weeks ago. And she goes, yes. But I know that he's been in church a long time. He's been a Christian a long time. I talked to a lot of the friends and the pastor as well. He's been there for a long time. I just known him for 2 weeks, but I think that God is like tugging me. Is it the Lord tugging you, or is it your heart tugging you? And she's like, well, I don't know. And I said, if you can answer this question, then you're going in the right direction. If not, you're not going in the right direction. I ask a very simple question. Do you trust the guy? And she says, how would I trust him if I only know him 2 weeks? Exactly, right? Exactly, that's my point. Next call, right? That one's done. If you don't trust him, why would you marry him, right? Because ultimately, the question about trust is a key question that we need to ask ourselves. Do you trust your spouse? Do you trust your parents? Do you trust your kids? Actually, in India, you know, they still have the tradition that Christians arrange the marriages. They arrange the marriages. Hey, I'm all for it, man. I have 2 daughters. My boys can do whatever they want, but my girls. So I met this guy who had been married 21 years, and he met his wife the day they got married. And so that is a conflicting in my mind, there's a conflicting issue, because I'm telling you that she only knew this guy for 2 weeks. She didn't trust him. Of course, don't marry him. But in India, parents make all the arrangements. And the bottom line is that he was here at the altar, and then the door opened, and that's your wife. And they had been married for 21 years. And this guy raised his hand and asked the professor and the guy who was giving his testimony, can you please tell me, why is it that in India, parents don't trust the kids? Because ultimately, it's a matter of trust, according to his understanding. Why is it that in India, the parents don't trust the kids to find their own? And the guy from India responded, and he said, no, it's just in India, kids trust their parents. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm glad I didn't ask the question. Whoa. Very significant question. Do you trust the person? Do you trust each other? And so the question today, as we're moving forward, is a very important question because it relates to who do we trust to lead the church? Who can we trust to really give our relationship to and trust that they're going to guide us in the right direction? And Titus has something to say about this, and I'm going to give you just a little video to put us in the context, and then we're going to look at the passage. Very simple. Paul had been to Crete, and this is one of his kids that he believed they're like spiritual kids to him. And he had Timothy, and he had Titus, and he had a couple others. And now he's going to leave Titus in charge of this island where there's churches that he started. Now, I'm going to make a parenthesis here. Things were not going great in those churches. So that makes me feel good, because if in the beginning of the church things weren't going great, we're good. Because when things don't go great, that doesn't mean that God is not moving, because he moves in spite of things that are not going great. So the storm was blowing, things were happening, and the Lord was still at work, right? Do you believe that? In the midst of the storm, in the midst of everything that is going on, the Lord is still in control. And so now, Paul is going to tell Titus that he's going to have to do something with the leadership in that area. He says, for this reason I left you in Crete, that you should set in order the things that are lacking and appoint elders in every city as I commanded you. So here's his solution. There's issues going on. There's churches that are having conflict. Now the solution is you, Titus, you're going to set up elders in those churches so they can deal with the situation. Now, what are the characteristics of those elders? And that's what we're going to look at, because it relates completely to the vote that we're going to have this afternoon or this morning. Because the vote, really, I told you in the lead meeting, is not about changing the name. It's not about bylaws. It's not about new philosophy of ministry. It's not really about the budget. The real question is, do you trust the elders? That's the bottom line. The vote is, do you trust the elders to lead the church? But there's three characteristics that are very important, and Paul is going to explain them to us as he's writing to Timothy. If a man is blameless here is not perfect. So there's people that can be in leadership that can make mistakes. They're not perfect, but they're blameless. Explain that to us. Well, here's the definition. The word is anekletos, exemplary conduct, shunning the appearance of evil and walking in all of the ordinances and commandments of God. In the negative form, which is here in this Greek word, it can also mean making legal charges against someone in a court of law, not convictable in a court of law. In other words, someone who has a good testimony, someone who has integrity. I remember one of my professors telling me that our testimony is such a powerful thing. We need to guard our testimony. And he told the story. I don't know if I told you the story, but he came to a bank and gave a check, and in return, he got $200 more than what he was supposed to get. So he was walking out of the bank and counted, and he got $200 more. Now, he had a couple options. One, praise God for your provision, which would have been stealing, or I'm going to go back and tell them what they did. So he went back to the counter and told the lady, you gave me $200 extra. And she said, I know I gave you $200 extra. He goes, how do you know? Well, I was at your church on Sunday when you preach about integrity, and I just wanted to make sure that you're for real. That's a very low price to pay for keeping good testimony, don't you think? Same professor told a story about visiting his father, who was not a Christian. He goes to his father. He was a youth pastor then. Goes to his father and said, Dad, I'm visiting you. And of course, the dad said, would you go to the store and buy me some beer and some cigarettes? And he's like, oh, man. Well, he was a Christian youth pastor. He took the money, and he drove to the other city to make sure that nobody would see him. And he goes to that other town, buys the beer, buys the cigarettes, puts them on the counter, make sure that nobody's watching. And then it rings the thing, and he goes, it's 5:25, Pastor. And he looked up, and he was one of the kids in his youth group. That kid never went back home. He never went back to church. Why? Because the kid can't trust him anymore. Because his integrity, he was not blameless anymore before the kid. We could argue, we could take it to low court, and, well, he was not really guilty because he was buying it for... But can you imagine him explaining to the kid, well, it's from my dad. But I don't know why. I don't know what happened to us, but we don't value blameless like we should anymore. I don't know what happened to us, but we don't value integrity like we should anymore. Let me tell you why. Because today we value likes more than integrity. How many likes do you have in Facebook? How many friends do you have in Facebook? How many followers do you have in Twitter? Who cares? Blamelessness is important. Integrity is important. Let me tell you why. It's because I've been to so many meetings where now that's the most important question. They ask you, how many people do you have in Twitter following you? How many people go to your church, as if numbers were the most important thing? When Paul is saying, if you're going to set up leaders, they better be blameless. In other words, they should have integrity. Now, if people have integrity, then you can trust them, Paul is saying, because they need to have a testimony that the devil cannot point out and say, well, this guy is doing something wrong here or there. And today, make things very easy. You just Google their name. Google their name, right? You Google their name and everything comes out. I mean, good, bad, trash, good, everything comes out. Google my name. There's stuff there that I don't want there, but it's there. It's not bad. Just now you go, oh, now I'm going to Google it. But if you Google my name, Jeffrey De Leon, there's stuff that I don't know people posted there, but I better have a good testimony because people can take a picture now and post it, and now you Google it, and the picture shows. So everywhere you go, now it's a lot easier because now there's even websites where you can type a name, and it shows you if they have any criminal history, anything, that actually we do here. If you're going to work with kids or anything like that, we run a criminal history and all that stuff. Actually, when I came as a pastor, you guys ran everything about me. He's Latino, run everything. Like go extra the mile. Go to Latin America and find the records over there. Because if you find something that is not based on integrity, then the devil can come and attack and say, oh, but you see, he has a history of not being blameless. And the devil can use any strategy he wants, but he cannot go against integrity. So the principle here is extremely important for all of us. A trustworthy person is someone who can't be accused and convicted of wrongdoing, someone without legal or moral problems, someone who has integrity. So the question for us today as we move forward, the question is very simple. Can you trust the leaders in this community? Can you trust the elders? Can you trust the pastor? Can you trust those that God put in place? Because I am going to tell you, I've known the elders for about 10 months. 10 months because in March, it's going to be a year. That's amazing how time flies when you're having fun, at least for me. Some of you guys are dragging. You're like, oh, man. But I'm having a blast. So for me, a year? No way. I've been here 10 months. I've met the elders' families. I've Googled their names before I came. I've asked people in American Airlines about Jeff. I've asked Phil's workers about him. I called Dave's office. Just like they were doing background on me, I was doing background on them. Because I thought if I'm going to work with them, I better know that they're blameless, that they have integrity. And I think they were doing the same thing about me. Let me tell you this. This is extremely important for you to understand because I've been to thousands of churches around the world. Thousands. And I'm not trying to brag here, but I'm just going to tell you the lives that these men have are worth following. They are. So if they have integrity and they're blameless, then we get on board and we go because you can trust them. Why? Well, Paul is saying you need to set elders that are trustworthy. In other words, they're blameless. Not perfect, but blameless. But see, here's the challenge. Because we don't value integrity that much, then we put more emphasis on the mistakes than in the integrity. Let me explain myself. There's a big difference between a mistake and a sin. Mistake. I trusted this guy, so I am going to marry him. Mistake. You trusted a guy you don't know. Sin is to get involved sexually with this man before you get married. That's sin. That's not a mistake. But people come and say, well, I made a mistake. What's your mistake? Well, I've been sleeping around. Well, that's not a mistake. That's a sin. But we have mixed them up, and so now people see a mistake, and because they don't value integrity that much, they make the mistake as if it was that big of a deal. No, we all make mistakes, people, right? Is anybody perfect here? I make mistakes all the time. My kids know it. My wife knows it. But the question is, can we see past the mistake and ask, can I trust them? Because mistakes, we all make them. But having blameless lives is a value that leaders should have in the churches. And then he goes very specific. He's going to like break it down. He says, blameless, integrity. Now here's where you're going to measure a man for real. And he starts with this concept. The husband of one wife. or the concept of being faithful to his wife. Now, can somebody that has been divorced serve as an elder? That will be a question that we'll have to deal later. Because that's not really what he's talking about, even though people took interpretation and said, no, you can only be an elder if you've only been married once. But the Bible really is referring to the faithfulness of this man to that one woman. Now, I'm going to bring my prop. I used it before, but I never gave you the definition of it. So I'm going to bring it, and this time I'm going to give you the definition. The definition is important because the meanings of words have changed through the years. And so it is important for us to bring up and clarify some of the terms. You know that the fact that I have a PhD proves that God has a sense of humor, right? Because if I can get a PhD in this country in a different language, anybody can get a PhD. Because I hated school. My parents are here to prove it. I was terrible in school. And the fact that I have a PhD, which is the highest academic degree that you can get in a fully accredited university, University of Chicago and Trinity International University, proves that God has a sense of humor. God saw this poor Guatemalan and he said, well, this guy is so bad in academics, I'm going to give him a full scholarship, and I'm going to show the world that he can use dumb people to get a PhD, which is supposed to be only for smart people. And so here's my degree that hangs in my office. But what you don't know is that the degree has the meaning of the PhD behind. So when I get proud that I have a PhD, I pick it up and I read the back. Here are the possible definitions for PhD. Please hire desperate. Psychologically deficient. Philosophically disturbed. Pathetically hopeless dumb. That really helps when you get proudful. Parents have doubts. Professors had doubts. Patiently headed downhill. And this is my favorite, permanent head damage. And actually, it's about $100,000 for these definitions. Just to go through after your master's degree, then you another 5 years, then you write your dissertation, then you defend your dissertation. And one of my professors said, now you're going to get to write your business cards, and they're going to say, Dr. Jeffrey de Leon. Now people are going to get to call you Dr. Jeffrey de Leon. Now your business cards are going to say, Jeffrey de Leon, PhD. And he said, just remember that your best business card is not the one that says Dr. Jeffrey de Leon. My dad also taught me this. Your best business card is your wife's face. Now, I have to agree. I am married to the most beautiful woman in the world. I have to agree. And she's pretty outside too. Because my PhD means nothing if I'm a bad husband. Anything in the world that you can get means nothing if you have a sad wife. If your wife doesn't support what you do, Paul is saying this is extremely important. Because when it comes to following someone, you better follow someone that the wife respects. Because if the wife doesn't respect them, then don't follow. Not a good idea. Why? Because at home, I can't pretend to be someone that I'm not. Am I explaining myself here or not? That's why I open my house for you guys to come and visit, so you can see me in my house, because in my house, I can't pretend. And that's why it's so important for us to be able to measure the trustworthy of a man by the wife. That's why Paul is saying, the husband of one wife, faithful to his wife. If you have a happy wife, you're a successful man. If you have a sad wife, then you're a loser. Basically. This is a different version. The principle here, the way a husband treats his wife is a direct reflection of his trustworthiness. Again, I'm going to say it one more time. The way a husband treats his wife is a direct reflection of his trustworthiness. Or else, Paul wouldn't say, listen, forget it. Hey, you know what? Don't worry about the husband and the wives, because Paul knew that the relationship between husband and wife is key. Ultimately, why? Because that's the reflection between Christ and the relationship with the church. I don't know if you remember seeing this video, but it became viral because this guy's waking up from anesthesia and he sees his wife and he's so surprised that it's his wife. I don't know if you remember this video, but here it is. My prayer is that none of the husbands need to be drugged in order to see their wives that way. Because if you need to be drugged to be surprised at the gift that God gave you, then you need help. All husbands need to understand that our wives are a gift from the Lord. The Bible says that. And the way we treat our wives is a direct reflection of you can be trusted or not. Very important. So I pray, right, that all of us would be able to look at our wives and say, man, God's grace met me. People make fun of different things, and I always make fun of the fact that I marry her and that God has the power to heal the blind, but I also believe that God has the power to blind people, because in her case, God blinded her. And I keep that always in my mind. I actually have her on my phone, because every time I pick up my phone and I slide my phone is too small, but that's why the picture here. So I have this picture on my phone, but when you want to, get the phone going, you make a little slide here on the shoulder. I guess that's as far as I can go, because homeschooling here. Because last time I made a joke about Barbies and I got a firestorm. So I'm going to just leave it as the shoulder. Why? Because it's a great reminder of God's grace. It's a great reminder of my priority as a man is to make sure that my wife is happy. My number one ministry is her. So if something comes up, if something happens, I need to fight for protecting her. What? Paul is saying that if a man has that clear in his mind and he has the ability to work toward that, then you can trust that person. So with the elders, look at the wives of all the elders. Don't they always have a smile? Don't they always look like they're happy? And I can testify to that. We've done retreats together, and we have a blast. It's so much fun to see couples happily married. And how are you happily married? When your wife is happy, right? Isn't that what the phrase says? Happy wife? Happy life. There's no verse that can support that unless you go to these verses that explain that a husband needs to be faithful to his wife. You can trust a man who is faithful to his wife. And then Paul finishes at this concept, and then he's going to go very specific. Of course, the question is the same. Can you trust the leaders in this community based on that? Based on their wives? Based on the relationship they have with the wives? Can you trust them? And then Paul says, having faithful children not accused of dissipation or insubordination. This is huge because many people in ministry have kids that hate God. Many people. I know pastors all over Latin America, they have incredible conflicts with their kids because they took more time in church than with their kids. So their kids hate the gospel. Actually, I met with a guy in Cochabamba, a kid who grew up in church, and he hates God, had tattoos all over, and I'm not against necessarily all this. I'm just trying to explain his condition. He didn't want to be in church, but he heard I was coming. He heard my radio show. He was there, and he was there to tell me that he grew up in a church. His father is still a pastor, and he hates the gospel. And I asked him why. And he said, because my dad never had time for me. So he walked away from the gospel. And this explains, look at the two words, dissipation and insubordination. The word asotia, that which can't be saved, that's dissipation, waste, spiritual wakefulness due to excessive behavior and the dire consequences it brings. So Paul is saying you cannot trust someone that kids are a waste. They're so spiritual far, you can't really trust them because they didn't do a good job in their house. Now, I know that we could argue and say, well, I know terrible parents that had great kids. And I know wonderful parents that had bad kids. But Paul is referring to the time when they're still in your house, where they're still under your authority, where they're still under your care. He's talking about that age bracket. I'm really in trouble because this is the age bracket that he's really talking about. Between the teenage years and the adult years, when they're in your house, when they live with you, that's when he's really talking about. Because when they grow up and they leave, then that's their decision. They make their own decisions. And the other word is even more specific. The word anipotactos. Not submissive, disobedient, unruly, unwilling to come under Christ's lordship, God's plan, uncooperative, with a defined attitude toward appointed authority, uncontrollable, rebellious. Now, I know that every single elder, all of us, if we stand before you, we will have to say the reason why our kids are loving God and are serving God is because of His grace. Amen. I have to agree with that. There's nothing. There's no magic. The 2,000 parents that came to that conference, I was speaking on the book, When Consequences Are Not Enough, and there was a lot of people there, and I guess a lot of them were hoping for some magical concepts and ideas, something that will all of a sudden fix their kids. And I had to disappoint the majority that came, because Proverbs 22:6 is not a promise. It's a proverb. So you can work with the kid and teach all you want to the kid, but at some point he will make his own decision or her own decision. The only thing you can do is trust in God's grace and His mercy. Now, are there things that parents do to influence their kids? Of course. And Paul is saying you need to look at those things and evaluate your trustworthiness toward that person based on how their kids relate to him. Not only how he relates to his wife, because the principle here is extremely important. The way the kids relate to their father is a direct reflection of his trustworthiness. The way the kid treats his dad, it's a direct reflection of you can trust them or not. Just think about one of the biggest TV things that we had in this country was The Simpsons. You remember that? How many of you remember that name? The Simpsons, I don't know if they're out of TV or not, because I haven't had a TV for a long time. I'm not going to tell you why, because of the homeschoolers. But hey, I homeschool, so I homeschool, so I'm just making fun of myself. So anyways, I just want to clarify that they had a father figure that is a dumb. He's an idiot. And that's what the culture really has pushed. They pushed dad to be an idiot. And so that then is reflected in how kids treat their father. And I've seen it many, many times in a store. I guess the other day I saw the kid in a store, and he wanted something, and the father said no, and the kid said, yes, I want it, and the dad said no. He said, yes, I want it, and the dad said no. Yes, I want it, and he said no. Wah! Okay, gave it to him. And I'm thinking to myself, who lost? Who lost? We all did. Whole society lost, because here's a kid that has no respect for his father. Now, you don't impose that respect. You have to understand. This is extremely important. None of the elders come to their kids. I don't come to my kids and say, well, you're going to obey me because I'm your father. It's not a position-based submission. Listen, this is extremely important. It's not a submission that comes as a result of the position. It's a submission that comes as a result that the father is a father to the kid. He has gained the credibility to influence his kids. I have never had to sit my 4 kids and say, you're going to listen to me because I'm your father. I've told them, if you don't obey, you're out of here. I've said that before. But I've never had to impose myself in a way that it's my position that forces you to obey. No, it's about the relationship. It's about the time we spend together. It's about doing life with my kids. It's about building the credibility to be able to influence them. And Paul is saying you're going to set elders. You're going to set elders in the church. They need to be trustworthy. They need to have integrity. They need to love their wives. They need to be faithful to their wives. And their kids better have a reflection of the kind of leadership that you want in your house. So can somebody be fair and evaluate a leader based on the kids? I think they can. Is there room there for grace? Of course there's room for grace, because we don't have perfect kids. You can probably look at my kids and point at a bunch of issues, and you can point at anybody and point at a lot of things. The point is not, listen, the point is not perfection. The point is, can you trust them based on that very basic principle? And that's the question that we want to leave. Can you trust the leaders in this community? I want everybody to please stand up, and I'm going to explain to you what we're going to do next, because time's flying. And I know a lot of people wrote to my email and said, Jeff, I'm not going to be there, but please count my vote as a yes. And I think we can do that. And some of the people wanted us to just mail them the little piece of paper, and we'll probably try to do that with those who requested. But let me just tell you what Kaylee, do we have the little ballot so you know what we're going to do? What we're going to do is we're going to pray, and we're going to be closing. And if you've been coming to our community and you think, well, I can't trust them. I really can. I've seen their lives. I can trust them. And you're not a member. Officially, you're not a member. I would like to encourage you to still fill this out, because part of the membership in the new bylaws is you have to agree with the bylaws in a written form, and this is a written form. So one of the steps of becoming a member is you say, yes, I agree with the bylaws and the philosophy of ministry that you name, then you are step closer. And then the other step is very simple, is, publicly saying, I want to be part of this community. And then we all say yes, and we do a party, and we're going to do that on the 31st. We love parties here. And so there's 4 items here that we're going to be clicking. I'm going to tell you how to vote. Yes is the right way to vote, because that's isn't that what everybody's saying now in the TV? Vote for me because, whatever. So I bear witness and come into agreement with changing our name from Gateway Grace Fellowship to Relevance Community, and all that implies, of course. We explained that in the lead meeting. If you didn't hear it, it's taped. We can give you, or it's copy. We can give you a copy of that. Second, I agree to adopt the new philosophy of ministry as well as the new bylaws. That's another yes. Number 3, I agree to become an elder-led congregation. Has been an elder-led congregation, but while you're saying yes, what you're saying is, I know that I have the freedom to voice my opinion, but decisions are not going to be made based on the democracy or the amount of opinions that we get. Decisions are going to be made because we understand that's where God is leading us. That's what we're saying. So everybody's entitled to their opinion. I understand that. Coming to this culture in Latin America, it's a little bit different. But here everybody's entitled. You are entitled to your opinion, and you're welcome to come, just as long as you understand that by giving your opinion, you're not assuming that we have to listen and do what you told us to do. Because ultimately, the elders, we're going to have to face God and be responsible before God. And so pray for us, and by saying, yes, I agree, you're saying, well, based on the model that I see in Scripture, based on these concepts, God led elders to lead. And it's not going to be a democracy. In other words, we're not going to be asking for votes in every single decision we're going to make. Let me give you an example. We're going to have to change the front here, because one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to do media. We want to do radio here in Fort Myers with the 4 elders. We have a project. We're going to be talking more about that. But we want to do a project called Project 4. We already have a couple radio stations, and we want to do media. We want to be media-oriented because media has a power. I've convinced of that for 15 years. I've been doing media, and I know the power that media has to influence people outside our realm. So we're going to be changing some of the things. So we're not going to be voting for color. I'm not going to give you a ballot. Oh, I don't like blue. I don't like that's irrelevant, because you are trusting us that what we put here and the lights that we do here coming up are better for media because it's consistent with our vision. We're going to bring an associate pastor for strategy and operations. We're not going to be asking everyone, what do you think? Do you like them? We waste time trying to make decisions when we have 4 people that God set in place, and all you have to do is ask yourself, do you trust them? And so that's the other item. And 3 is, I agree with the proposed budget for 2016. You received the budget. You saw the budget. We have a fantastic finance team that put that together. If you wanted to know more specifics about the budget, we can always give you a copy of the more specifics. But you're just saying, yes, I agree that all this is going to ministry. And let me tell you, I am so happy that before I came, the finance committee did a fantastic job. And I'm so thankful that the finance team now understand the power of ministry. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a line item there, benevolence fund, $16,000. That is fantastic. That is huge. Yes, I am saying that is awesome. To have a finance team that understands, wow, all these resources that we have, we want to allocate to help people and do ministry, that is awesome. And also being able to lower all the salaries and all that to below 55%, that's also huge. I mean, they did a fantastic job. And would you please, one more time, give them a big hand of applause, because they did a fantastic job putting this budget together. Yeah, youth ministry got the budget on all that, so I am very thankful for them. So by doing yes there, you also agree with that. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to pray, then we're going to sit down. We're going to pass all this out. Who can vote? 16 and older can vote, but if you're younger and you really are for this and you're excited about it, you are not allowed to vote if it's going to say no. If it's going to say yes, it doesn't matter what age you are. We're still going to count your vote because you count. I promise you, elections in this country are not done this way. Because understand that there's 3 institutions that got established. It's the government, the church, and the family. and we should not confuse them. We should never bring government issues into the congregation because we're a different institution. We need to leave the government alone. We need to pray for them. We need to vote, but it's different. Different parameters to decide how we vote. So we would like you to please take time and we'll vote. Then 2 deacons, I think that it's finance and youth that are going to be taking these votes. And they're going to come and then just give us the pass or pass. Basically, that's what's going to be the voting. Let's pray with our eyes wide open, without bowing our head. Father, I want to thank you because none of us, not even one, has an excuse to say that there is no models worth following. You have set up church so that communities can come together, and you decided to put men to lead communities that have integrity. And I thank you because in this congregation, you have blessed us. You have shown your grace and your mercy with men that have integrity. And I'm so thankful for that. I wouldn't be here if I knew that they didn't have integrity. But I'm here because I know that you are so good and gracious to us. So thank you for the men that you have set in place here that have integrity. Love their wives. And their kids are an example to follow. And so I thank you. You're not looking for perfection because you are the only one who's perfect. And that's why we come to you with thankful hearts, thanking you because you are the ultimate model. But thank you for giving us human models around us that we can look at and say, well, there's no excuse for me. Because if they can do living with Christ in a good way, then we all can. So, Father, I pray that as we move forward and we make decisions, you will give us all wisdom. Help us to be men of integrity. Help us to be a community of people that reach out like we always have. And I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. And let me tell you just quickly just how proud I am to come back and hear about what happened while they're passing on the little pieces of paper. You know that there's families in need, and the leadership got together, and one of the things that we want to do for the future is the ability to help people that really need like housing and things like that. And what happened on Saturday is a great example of the vision and the possibility that can come to us with the resources that God has given us. We have a family in need, and Phil and just the elders and all of us decided that we were going to try to help this family, the elders. All of them came together. But the Schwartz, together, they made a decision to really want to get involved, and that's why Phil led this effort to get this little house ready for them. And things like that are the practical things that I'm talking about. And you guys have always been so willing to get involved in needs and meeting needs. People that need cars, you guys have come together. People that need to pay for their mortgage or monthly payment and stuff, you guys have come together. I mean, you guys are truly a community of believers that are willing to help those in need. So I commend you. I'm so proud of that. And I want to thank you for getting involved in that. Now, please sit down. If you don't have a piece of paper, a pen, we have some pencils that we're going to be passing around so that we can fill this out. Who needs a pencil or a pen? It should be a pen. A pen, okay. Guys, can we get some? I think we need like five or 7. Okay. We need about 10. I think they're, okay, we'll give you. Oh, you need ballots? Okay, guys, we need more ballots. James, can you help us? We need a couple more here while the guys get the little pen. And I want to tell you that right after we do this, we're going to take a little break, and then we want to invite those who are sending their kids to Jamaica to stay, because we have the Jamaica trip meeting right after this with all the information that you need to know about what we're going to be doing in Jamaica. So we invite you to stay for that as well. And I think we'll be able to get out of here by 11:30. Who else needs pen? Anybody else? Okay, we need a pen over here. Pen, perfect. All right. And the deacons are going to help us. Once you've done with a little piece of paper, you fold it and you pass it all to the edge, to your, over here on this side, to your left, and over here to your right. So you guys here to your right, you guys here to your left. We'll put them right over here. We'll pick them up. Yeah, pass them all to the aisles right here, and we'll pick them up. So we can all pick them up. Everybody got them? Scott, we have a couple more here. Somewhere here. Awesome. Everybody please stand up. Let's respond in music.